Welcome to the Learning Can't Wait podcast, a Full Mind production. At Full Mind, our vision is to ensure every child has access to an exceptional education. Each episode, we will be joined by pathfinders within and around the education space who are bringing about transformational change on behalf of deserving students. I am your host, Haley Spierbauer. Welcome back, everybody, to the Learning Can't Wait podcast. It is always a good day when I get to have a school leader and, better yet, a rural school leader on the podcast. And today I get to welcome Dr. Bill Chapman, the Superintendent of London ISD in Texas and the President-elect of NREA. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you so much, Haley.
You know, I have a huge bias toward rural America, primarily because I have no experience teaching or living in rural America. And I think you have a really interesting story that we'll get to in a few moments about all the types of experiences of leading districts in rural America. So thank you for coming to the podcast.
You're so welcome. I'm glad to be here.
You know, Bill, I always start off with the same question, so I'll start it here. How did you come to be the personal and professional version of yourself?
I think kicking and screaming could be a good way of saying it in many ways. I will tell you that I am the product of two educators. My
Mhm.
mom was an elementary educator. My dad was a high school educator in career and technology and became a administrator. My brother and I were both uh, told to not go to education. That education was not a career that you wanted to go into because of finances. I could do so much better, and I should go into accounting or business or engineering or something like that. And as you can see, I listened so well to my parents. Uh, as did my brother. He's a teacher coach and just got moved into administration.
Oh my
So
gosh.
as many boys did, we did not listen to our parents. But I literally I went to school to be an accountant, and then and realized I did not want to be an accountant because I did not want to wear a suit and tie and a chair at a desk in a room by myself.
Mm.
And so honestly, my dad, I was a freshman, sophomore in college, and he took me to a psychologist friend of his to do an aptitude test. And literally the old school aptitude test and said, you're really good towards this, this, and this. And what it came up with is working in medicine, working in athletics, working with people. Those are what they came into. So I changed my major to become an athletic trainer. So I
Mm.
went to college, was an athletic trainer at UTSA, graduated. I realized I wanted to have something to work in a high school. So I got a degree in history. So I could then have a history. I could teach history, be a trainer. Because at that time, you couldn't be a full-time trainer. Then you still had to teach a class. So if I want to teach, I like history. I always was a history buff. So I got a degree in history at UTSA, a minor in physical education because of the athletic training classes I was taking. And I took all my hours and my exams. To this day, the hardest exam of my life was to become a licensed athletic trainer. Um, and because it was a written test and a practical test, and it
Mm.
was the hardest exam, took it in Houston, Texas. And I never worked a day as a trainer. I went to my parents worked for Corpus Christi ISD at that point in time, a very large district with 5 schools, and I went and visited with their assistant athletic director and she took me to all the 5 schools and the trainers. They all had trainers. At that time, it was only had one trainer. Now schools have 2 and 3 trainers for large schools. That was
Sure.
not the norm back in the 90s. But they said, "Oh, well, we also see that you coach soccer, you've ref soccer, you've played football, and all this kind of stuff." She goes, we have some coaching needs. And so I talked to, I shifted and became a history teacher and football and soccer coach at Moody High School. And just through there began my progression. My wife pushed me to get my master's degree. I was thinking of becoming a head football coach, athletic director. But somehow, as I say, I drifted to the dark side and went to the administration route and became an assistant principal and a principal and assistant superintendent and superintendent. So I, 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 I can tell you this, I landed where I'm supposed to land. I
Mm.
truly believe that. I may have gotten here in the most roundabout way, but I
Sure.
am where I am supposed to be.
You know, you started off by saying that you didn't listen to your parents and neither did your brother. I hope my boys aren't listening to this episode, but sometimes it works when you don't listen to your parents, you know? They don't always know. But it's funny, as you were starting to tell this story, I was listening to you, and you are such a people person. You and I met at an event at the NREA conference in Utah this year. You're such a gregarious, big personality, so kind, welcoming, and inclusive, which is what makes a great teacher. So then you said you took this aptitude test and it talked about you being a people person. And I just wonder if we sold the profession more as being a people person, if we would get more teachers to come into the field since we're facing somewhat of a crisis these days. It makes me wonder because I too consider myself a people person.
Yeah.
And I think it really lends itself well to being an educator.
No, no, it does 100% because you have to have that empathy for other people, and truly, people who are really great teachers. I'm not going to say all teachers.
Mm,
People who are really great teachers have that high level of empathy to where they're able to really see that kid for who they are and what they can be. Um, there's some that don't, so that's a different world. Those are the ones we try to not get out of the profession. But we have that ability, and it's just we want people to do well.
yeah.
You're becoming a teacher because you want to see people grow and change and adapt and give them the skills and the lessons that they can take far outside of my classroom. And it's 100% true. I think there's a piece of your best teachers are those gregarious people. And the term we use, and I use is those kid magnets. Those
Mm,
kid magnets in your school, on your coaching staffs, on your wherever it may be. That's who I want. We were hiring for our AD this last year when I was meeting with the committee who was going to do the hiring. I go, I need someone who is a kid magnet. People who, someone who wants those kids to be around. They want those kids around. They drive those kids to them because you get those, any program can grow. And so you can see that on campuses and with your great teachers. You are 100% correct.
no, I love that was part of how you hire, is thinking about who are the kids going to gravitate towards. I mean, today there are two crises that I've touched on one already, which is shortages of teachers across the US. And it's not pervasive in every district, but we have lower enrollment in programs right now than we ever have before. The second crisis that's hitting America right now is absenteeism. Students are enrolled in school, but they're not always going. Now, I know you've worked in many different districts across Texas. And I'm curious, but as I hear you talk about people, kid magnets get kids to school,
Yes.
right? Like those are the teachers that when you have their class, you don't want to miss it because you want to be near them, you want to be with them. So I think that that's a cool, like another application or solution to the absenteeism issue. Curious if the districts that you've worked in, London included, but your previous as well, have faced the absenteeism crisis and how you've handled it to get kids to school.
The short answer is yes. The long answer is some have and some haven't. And I will tell you that I've been blessed. This is my 33rd year in education. I taught I taught and coached for 8 years, was an AP for three, associate for one, two, principal for two. And so all of it, I think this is my sixth district. Um, I will tell you that the absentee problem was more of an issue in the larger urban and suburban schools I was in. I'm going to be honest with you. The rural schools, we did not have as much of an attendance issue until a few years ago. Um, the COVID change and return from education did change that a little bit. We did not get hit as heavy as the urban and suburban schools did, and where I was in Palacios and here in London. But it is there. I will tell you, it's there.
Mm,
Um, but I think I will tell you what I really believe. So, my first high school was a 2,000 kid high school in the middle of Corpus Christi.
hmm
It was the school that had one of the highest low socioeconomic statuses. Were predominantly Hispanic, and we were the afterthought school in many ways. Um,
mm,
my next school, I moved to one about 1,800 kids in Huntsville, Texas. I don't know if you know where Huntsville is. Huntsville is about an hour north of Houston. It is home to the Texas Department of Corrections. There were
Oh.
about 7 prisons inside our area. There were
Mm,
7 prisons, Sam Houston State University, and Forest. There was no taxable entity. So we were a very poor school
mm,
with most of the land owned by the government, who had a large part of the population that lived there who was there because they were there to visit their parents and be close to their parents. That happened. Then I moved to Cold Spring, a little east of there, which was my first true rural, or I went to Willis for 4 years, which is more of a larger suburban school, um, more affluent. And then as principal at Cold Spring, that's when I really hit my rural roots. It starts in Cold Spring, I believe. Um, the the difference between those urban, suburban, and those rurals is when you get to a rural school, one, yes, it's smaller. First and foremost, that size of a school matters.
mm,
As someone who spent my entire life in high schools, once you break above that 12, 13, 1,400 number kids, that school starts to be hard to manage to keep everybody moving forward the same direction, everyone involved. That, but if you get down to those 400 and 500, 600 to 1,000 kid schools,
mm.
your kids are doing everything. I mean, your kids are, still marching in the band while they're playing football. They're cheering and playing volleyball. They're involved in multiple sports. You're always gonna have those kids that will specialize in one or two sports, but really, you have that they're involved in FFA and athletics. You have to do, they're so involved, which keeps them engaged in that school setting. There is
Mm,
a, that's what I refer to as the quality of life of a rural school, where you know who the kids are because they're involved in everything. And
right,
so you can throw a rock and find that kid's in 15 organizations.
right.
But by them being engaged in school, it's harder to miss school. And
Yeah,
also,
no,
and
it,
also they get so many absences for the activities that they can't miss school because they're already missing too much school because of their activities.
well, that's a fair point. And truly the disengagement crisis, which is attributed a large part to attendance issues in schools, you're naming the antidote for it, which is everyone just moved to rural America.
There is
Well,
a
you
piece
have a
to it.
soft spot in your heart though for rural America, Bill. You
Yeah.
named when your roots started and some of the benefits of being in rural America and how you've seen it play out as it relates to one particular issue. Talk to me a little bit about NREA and what the organization does to help foster relationships amongst these isolated schools and why you're taking on the presidency in the future.
Well, I'm taking on because I stumbled onto being I was first in the Texas Rural Education Association, which is the Texas affiliate of NREA, and that's how I got into NREA. I got involved, and it was great because I didn't know what I was doing and not doing, and where I was going, and then I mean, it gave a point to where I was like going, this is a niche where you know, people always talk about putting money into schools and fixing schools, but when the state and federal governments are looking into fixing schools to some extent, what they end up looking for is they try to solve problems at your large urban and suburban schools, just
Mm,
because that's what they're targeted to do. There tends to be more issues there. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just what it is. Um, but what happens is when even Texas passes a law to solve a problem in Dallas, Houston, Austin, San Antonio, we get the shrapnel of that, and the fallout
mm,
of rural schools is felt because we're having to solve a problem that we didn't have,
mm,
but that takes money and time and manpower and things like that. So what NREA, what I found so much, and we actually redid our vision and mission while we were in Salt Lake City. You know, we've turned into NREA envision strong rural schools and communities where education is the catalyst for resilience, opportunity, and success. And so why that means so much to me is yes, we are focused on the schools. We're also focused on our rural schools are only as strong as our rural communities. And so NREA
mhm,
is an organization that brings together K-12 practitioners, community colleges, higher ed, researchers, all looking at things to help, you know, grow the benefits of rural schools and communities because it takes both where they're both having facing issues, and if the community starts dying, the school dies as well. And so
Right.
it's that two balance there that gets you there to help go. So that's where I kind of fell in love with this. Makes sense to me is I live in Texas, and growing up as my dad as an educator, we moved around a lot as he was chasing and growing into the administration of CTE. Then was called vocational education, of course. But so I spent time in some smaller schools, suburban schools. I moved after second grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, eighth grade, and ninth grade, and kind of hit the gamut of some fairly rural schools in Northeast Texas, rural schools in Southeast Texas, near the Louisiana border, and then suburban schools in Corpus and Austin area. And I will tell you that so school is a school when you're a kid, but you can tell a difference in how you and where you belong in some of those different areas. And I I didn't realize it until I started working in Cold Spring Oakhurst High School as a rural school principal, where I got some of my sensibilities from in my time in Carthage and in Orange and things like that, and the kind of fun you had in some of those areas in a rural school as opposed to my high school piece being a little more suburban school. Um, and I look back fondly on both of them. My high school was a rural suburban. It was still now it's a totally suburban area, but it was kind of a
Mm.
little bit. We were the west half of my district was all my friends and farms and ranches and FFA kids. So we had this piece that semi-rural piece, but it wasn't quite what I'd experienced at other schools. Um, but I go back to there's a quality of life that some of these schools give you that you don't get in your urban suburban schools.
That's really interesting. Are you talking about from the perspective of an educator or from a student or both?
Both,
Yeah.
both. Uh, my freshman year, I was at Round Rock High School. There were 4,500 kids. There were almost 2,000 freshmen when I was a freshman at that school.
Mm.
I don't even know. I didn't even walk, and I never walked the entire campus.
Wow.
There are buildings in my high school I never went to as a freshman because it
Hmm.
was so large. And I moved to my time at TM. There were 750 kids in my school. My
Right.
class was the largest class in the history of the school. There was 200 kids. You almost know every single person in your graduating class. And
Hmm.
then I moved into Cold Spring. We were a 500 kid school. There's 150 kids max in the class. And then same things right about where we are here in London. Pulaski is a little bit smaller. Gerald was a little bit smaller when I got there. The ability to truly know your teachers and know your classmates and know your administrators, and you see them all because there's no place else to go in Pulaski but to go to the
Sure.
grocery store. It's so
And
you
that's where
see
you see your
everywhere.
the whole team, the whole staff, etc.
I mean, if you go to Subway, one of my kids is making your sandwich. You
Sure.
go to Dairy Queen, someone's making your Blizzard.
Right.
That's because there's nobody else that's going to do the labor but your kids. So you see them over and over, and it's just the fact that you see those kids everywhere. You get to experience that life in that small town together, and it truly is. There's truly nothing like it.
Well, this is why I'm obsessed with rural America because I do a lot of work with rural schools through my role at Full Mind. But when I started the podcast series, mini series on rural schools and started interviewing leaders, the community, collegiality, resourcefulness, and collaboration
Yeah.
blew me away. I am so used to the competition that exists in New York State. I worked in urban settings and I've gone to school in suburban settings versus the opposite is true. It's, everybody's out to help their neighbor. We're benefiting here together. We're growing together. And that really struck me as something that more of America needed to know about, which is why I keep asking rural leaders like you to come on the podcast and share because it really feels underrepresented in the stories we tell about education.
Well, you hit it. I mean, as someone, I've lived both. I've lived both. I've loved both. You
Yes.
know, um, I'll give you a story that kind of shows you that.
Yeah, please.
I'm in this is my 14th year as superintendent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I spent 8 years in Gerald. Gerald grew from 972 kids to 2,200 kids. We were growing. We were growing out of being rural. Went to Palacios in 2020. My wife wanted to go to the coast. We moved back, but yes, we lived on the water. Palacios was a it's rural, but it's like really rural where we're driving 40 miles to get to our Walmart or 40 miles to our HEB, 40 miles to a Whataburger, those kind of things. So you had this piece, but the kids were so great, and we had these great kids. And so my second or third year in Palacios, my AD, my athletic director comes to me and says, look, he goes, I have my girls soccer team. I'm hurting. I cannot find a girls soccer coach. I go, okay, well, how can I help you? And he goes, will you coach girls soccer? And I go, well, what do you mean? He goes, you are by far the most qualified person in our school to coach this team. You spent 10 years coaching varsity soccer. He goes, you know the sport like nobody in this town. And I go, well, so I asked my board, I go, I'm being asked this. I go, do you mind if I coach our girls soccer team? And so they had a strong senior class. They had made the playoffs the first time in history the year before. And so the superintendent, starting in November, was the girls soccer coach. And so I'd never coached girls before. I'd always coached boys. But I became the girls soccer coach. And I loved every minute of it because I got to see those 35 girls in a different way. They got to see me a different way. I mean, most of the first week is, what do they call me? They kept saying, I'm Coach Chapman. I'm not Dr. Chapman. I'm Coach Chapman. And so once we got past that, and once I learned that traveling with girls on the bus is different traveling boys on the bus, there's a totally different experience for me. I didn't realize how much time was devoted to doing hair on the way to a game. I did not know that existed.
Sure. Yep.
But look, my assistant helped. She taught me that very quickly. But we had a great year. We made the playoffs. We won the most games in school history. We scored the most goals in school history.
Wow.
The parents were just thrilled to death because they saw that our girls progressed. We were in the hunt for. Had a great season. But I got to spend so much more time with those girls and learn. I got to see the district for a different level. I also was we also were the most successful program that year athletically. So I got to hang that over our coaches the following year.
Right? I mean, you rolled up your sleeves. You should be able to brag about it.
So you hear those pieces. That's what makes rural schools different. You hear stories of the superintendents driving the buses, hitting the roads.
I always tell the story of the superintendent who had to get his boiler license because he couldn't get someone within 4 hours to his school site.
We don't have boiler problems. We have air conditioning problems down
here.
Sure.
Okay. Right. We keep reminding me that you live like in beautiful Texas where it's 83 degrees today.
And when I went to Gerald, the previous suit handed me here. By the way, here's the tractor key. I'm going. I have the key to the tractors. So so it happens, but it is that piece of, when you're in a big district, you have so many people who do A and B and C and D. Well, in a small school, you do all A, B, C, and D, and E.
Sure.
And so
you learn a lot. You learn a lot.
Yeah.
Bill, we could talk as like, the next topic. I can bring up so many different hot button issues in education right now. AI or phone bans, whatever it may be. We've touched on a few already today. But I think beyond the specific topic is the larger question about mindset. And often in education, it is about getting people on board, finding consensus within a district, and then moving teachers forward toward the vision that you as the leader is trying to set and create for the community. Talk to me a little bit about, across the different years you've been a superintendent, in the many different places you've been a superintendent, how you particularly bring mindsets forward as changes need to happen.
I'm a firm believer in that it can't just be me. It has to come from a variety of people. I'm a coach by nature. You go even more, I'm an offensive line guy, which is offensive linemen are the guys that do all the grunt work that no one sees what really happens, but without them, nothing ever, you never make a play. You never throw a pass, never get a handoff, all that kind of stuff. So I always have that mentality going forth. And really what it is I'm willing to, so this is my third district I've taken over. So I've been a superintendent. And so my first and foremost is I try to model for my principals how they should work with their teams. And then you take it to where you have the district level, my cabinet level, my district leadership, then you have your campus leadership, your teams, and I try to model what I expect their meetings to be like and how it's supposed to be working together. Um, I want people to have the freedom to talk and to answer questions and to ask questions, um, and really make a collegial atmosphere to where you're willing to collaborate. Um, and so what I want to see is every meeting forever, an old flipping capturing kids' hearts. I don't know if y'all have it up there in other
No,
parts
no,
of the
tell
country,
me. I
but
don't know about this.
so flipping the thing called Capturing Kids' Hearts was a program I went through honestly as a teacher and then as a principal and later on. And it really is a way of making sure that you can't teach the kid unless they know you care. That's all it's based on until you know you care about them. And so there's things about, shaking hands at the doorway when you walk in the classroom, playing name games with kids, creating social contracts in the classroom to where these are our rules that the kids made up, not the teacher, the kids made. This is the rules we follow in this classroom about not interrupting, not, being mean to people, all that stuff. You do the same kind of stuff with adults. And one of their core things was every meeting that you have begin with good things, personal, professional, school ways. So every meeting I have, whether it's a cabinet meeting, leadership meeting, a principal meeting, number one on the agenda is good things. And we talk about things. It could be someone's daughter's doing well in volleyball. It could be, the team did well, win the playoffs, whatever it may be, or something cool on your campus. But you start off with talk about the good stuff that's happening. Some weeks it's hard to find a good thing, and so you really have to encourage people to get involved with it. And maybe, hey, we don't have school next week. That's a good thing. So that's fine. But
We'll
just set
all
that
recharge.
mentality
Yeah,
of,
exactly.
you set the deal of it's also about the people you're dealing with. And
Mm,
then so when I meet with the principals, the same thing happens. But I ask them, what are you doing with your staff? How are you growing your staff? What do you ask your department heads, your grade level chairs go do? And mimic this piece to where you start creating this mentality of we're all in this together and we all kind of have we're important in our own ways and we work things up and work things down. And so it sometimes takes a while to get principals to realize, look, when we have principal meeting, you take this back to your campuses and do this and bit by bit. And so everyone's there. And then literally, another thing I'm doing is my second district here is I'm literally right now scheduling a time where I'm going to go and sit and be on each campus for an entire day that teachers can roll through and visit with me during their conference. Don't have to come over here. I'm in some room somewhere on their campus, and they can come visit with me to make sure that, hey, they can talk whatever they want to. It's just I won't say anything. It may be good, bad, or ugly. I don't care. Just come visit. I'm a firm believer in them seeing me, being approachable. I try to hit every campus every week if I can. Um, Sometimes it gets difficult, um, but I want to be seen. I spent probably an hour and a half at the elementary campus yesterday, having a meeting with the principal. We met in the library. We just wander around the campus, go out to recess, just check things, talk about things. Just, you know, I can't, as a superintendent, I can't reside in some ivory tower
no.
and expect to know what's happening, and expect to know what's going on the campuses. And so if I make the effort and be out there, it's being visible. I hate to say part of this job, the most important of this job as a superintendent is being visible to parents, to kids, to teachers.
Right.
That's whatever you want to say. I think that's the biggest part of what I try to do.
I think when I hear you talk about it in that way, it reminds me about the earlier part of our conversation being people, right? That it is a huge component of being a good leader is being present, being visible, and listening, which is one you can learn, but often very innate. So appreciate that call out to how you build consensus and how you shift mindsets in your community, because often that is the hard work of being a leader, is doing things that are not popular but are important or necessary or driving you towards your goals, and getting everybody on board. So I guess as my final question for you, Bill, I want to ask you, what advice would you give a superintendent who's starting their career today in rural America?
You will wear many hats. You will make many decisions. You will encounter things you don't want to do and things that you wish you didn't have to do. Um, Honestly, I try to make sure, and the best thing you can do, and at times people make it harder than it is as you're working to make your district better, you got to keep what's right for the kids in that forefront. A lot of decisions that I make, people can come at from one side or the other.
Right.
If I can go to sleep at night and say, I made that decision because it was what was best for the kids of London ISD, then I've done my job.
That's like a mic drop right there. Bill, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your joy for this work, and also how you make it happen and how you've made it happen in all kinds of schools. We really appreciate you being a guest on the Learning Can't Wait podcast.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it, Haley.
And thank you to everybody who tuned in today. Thanks for listening to the Learning Can't Wait podcast. If you like what you heard, please rate, review, and share this episode. Be the first to know when we have a new episode by subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to be a guest on the show or have a suggestion for an episode, email us at podcast@fullmindlearning.com.